All right, I am Michael Pearl. We're here at The Door, located in Lobeville, Tennessee. This is No Greater Joy Ministries. You can find us at nogreaterjoy.org, and I'm going to tell you about our experience moving into the country, homesteading, and the ministry that came out of that, eventually a writing ministry that has brought in over $30 million, which is unbelievable. All that money has gone back into the ministry to help missionaries and to serve the gospel around the world. My wife and I, when we were young, would both squeeze into the same bathtub every night, as we still do, and get the water good and hot, and the water get cold, and that's the sign to get out, you know. And there we would sit and talk. That was our meeting place to get away from the kids. And we would sit and talk and dream. And she would tell me about the sweepstakes that she had filled out, win $1 million. And she wanted to win $1 million so that she could have food on the table. No, so that we would have the money to buy chick gospel tracts in multiple languages and send them all the way around the world. And so it was our dream. We had written a few little gospel tracts and printed hundreds of thousands of them and given them out different places. But we couldn't afford chick tracts, which were the best. Like This Was Your Life back then, and 666, great little tracts. So we wanted to be able to have the money to publish, to buy those and print as many as we could. So we dreamed and we dreamed and we dreamed. That went on for 20 years, I guess, dreaming about getting $1 million to be able to spend like that. Little did we know that God would multiply that and give us $30 million to spend in the ministry eventually. How did that come about? We didn't start off to create a ministry. We didn't start off to write books. We didn't start off to be noted for those books. That was the furthest thing from our thoughts. But we lived in Memphis there, and we've been homeschooling our children. And the Department of Human Services got after us because there was no word for homeschooling, and no one did it. It was an unknown thing. All they knew is the kids were truant. So they came out to the house there, and they said we had to put them in school. We said, no, we're not. And they said, yes, you will. And so they came out a second time, and then they had us go down a third time they came, and they had us go see the judge. They appointed a Monday morning at 10 o'clock, go down and stand before the judge in Memphis. So wanted us to bring the kids. I wasn't that stupid. So we had this escape scenario for the kids. They would go out the window if cops came. They would go to a barn about a mile away. They'd wait there. Grandparents would pick them up, take them out of the state. So that's the way the kids came up, knowing that we might have to flee. And so we went down to the judge without the kids, put the kids with the grandparents. And that judge said to me, he said, I watched a movie last week about this bearded guy, sort of like you, that was a Bible thumper, sort of like you. And he was abusing his kids, keeping them out of school. And I said, Judge, the reason I don't have a TV is I don't care about that garbage that's on it. And he went on and said what I'm going to have to do. And I said, listen, I got $100,000. That was a bit of an exaggeration. I've got $100,000 to fight this in court. I'll see you in court. And I got up and left. I got outside the door and realized I left my wife sitting there. So I opened the door, grabbed her arm, and pulled her out of the room. She was just frozen. So I walked down the hallway where a state senator, Curtis Person, state senator, had his office. And I said to him, here's what just happened. He said, I'll take care of it. He did. They didn't bother us anymore. I don't know what he did, but that was the end of it. He said, call the newspapers. So I called the Commercial Appeal. They came out and did a story and did Rebecca, about 9 years old at that time, playing the piano and all the phonics cards on the walls and all the schooling activity. And we had all the kids sitting down at tables with their little books and stuff, which they never did. And so it looked like a really active House on the Prairie school going on, you know what I mean? And so they wrote this story. We were like half of the page, a picture this big on the front page, the front of the second section, the two sections on that. And they had extra pictures of the shop and the kids working, kids swinging on a rope, had Gabriel swinging on a rope and dropping off in our pond. And they very favorable story back then about how we were being persecuted by the big bad government. Back then, they were on the little guy. And so another newspaper came out and did a story on us, and then the local paper came out and was on the radio. And so it pretty well stirred up. It was big news there and had several different days consecutive. They talked about it. So they didn't bother us anymore. But then about 3 months later, the state representative had a big meeting at a public school and invited everybody interested in homeschooling. Now, I thought we were the only ones. There was like 1,500 people showed up there. We were sitting way up in the balcony like this. Got there kind of late. The place was packed out. And he got up on the stage and condescendingly told us what we would be allowed to do as parents with our children and what we couldn't do. And I'd had enough of it after about 30 minutes. I stood up and I said, "Sir, you can pass your laws, but we will not obey them." And sat down. That's all I said. Well, that was headlines the next day, you know. And the people of Memphis rallied together, and we went down to Nashville, and we lobbied all of our congressmen, and we got homeschooling legal in Tennessee. Now, I don't know what was going on in the other states at that time. But the ministry died off there in Memphis, and Deb came back one day and said, I went with my parents back home to about 2.5 hours drive from Memphis, and there's this beautiful community there. And she described it. And I said, well, let's go see it. And so we packed up and took off and headed to the country. And so that was the beginning of our homesteading. That's what opened it up. Now I'm going to stop here and I'll continue with that in a little bit, all right?